HFS delegates, please join us in the auditorium. Our program will begin in just a few minutes. HFS delegates, please join us in the auditorium. Our program will begin in just a few minutes. As a courtesy to our delegates and presenters, please silence all electronic devices. Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Our program will begin now.
Good morning, everybody. It's my job to introduce Canada's Minister of National Defence, the Honourable David McGuinty.
That was easy. That was easy, Peter. Very elaborate. Good morning, everyone. Hello again. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Folks, you know, throughout this forum, we've explored the fundamental pillars of peace and security, from democracy and dialogue to industry and innovation. We've looked at what it takes to make our nations and our world more secure. There's another element too, one that's just as vital and maybe even more vital, and that's equality. It's been 25 years since the UN Security Council passed Resolution 1325, launching the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. In that time, we've made important progress, both in Canada and abroad, but there's still much, much more work to do. That's why the HFX Peace with Women Fellowship is so very important. It brings together senior women military officers from NATO and NATO partner countries to exchange ideas, build leadership skills, and frankly, help us find our way forward in an ever-complex world. I'm honored to introduce this year's fellows. They are a remarkable, frankly outstanding group of women representing 13 countries. I had a chance to meet them in my boardroom, and it was very intimidating. It really was. From Canada to Colombia, the United Kingdom to New Zealand and beyond, they are wing commanders, they are liaison officers, they're directors, they're advisors, and they're more. Together, this year's fellows have more than 330 years of combined service and 33 deployments under their belts. They have shown skill and dedication, both throughout this program and in their respective countries. They are among the very best their nations have to offer. Over the past number of weeks, the 2025 fellows have traveled from Washington, D.C. to Silicon Valley, then on to Ottawa and Toronto, and now finally to right here in Halifax. Along the way, they've met with senior figures in politics and business, technology and the military. They've deepened their ties between our nations. They've honed their already exceptional skills, and they've become even better leaders. Better leaders ready to take on an even more responsibility. We're so fortunate to have them here with us today. So to this year's fellows, thank you so much for your hard work. I hope you found the Peace and with Women Fellowship meaningful and engaging. We can't thank you enough for taking time away from your busy careers. We need your voices, and we need your leadership more than ever. And with that, I'd like to invite Lieutenant Colonel Anuka Milivara, to come up, who will speak on behalf of the fellows. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Mr. Minister. And good morning, ladies, gentlemen, excellencies, distinguished guests, fellows, past and present. I'm very proud, extremely proud, to stand here and speak to you today on behalf of this 2025 Strategic Leadership Programme, Peace with Women Fellowship, and to introduce you to this extremely experienced group of senior female military officers. Ladies, please, could you stand up? As Minister already mentioned, all of us have had an extensive and distinguished career. We are so far the most experienced cohort of fellows, and I'd like to repeat it. We have 40 advanced degrees, 33 deployments, and 331 years of combined service. Quite impressive. We are a truly multinational group, speaking 11 different languages and come from across 5 continents and 13 countries. military professionals from, let's say it aloud, Australia, Canada, France, Netherlands, New Zealand, Sweden, United Kingdom, and this year the fellowship welcomed first-time participation from Belgium, Colombia, Finland, Hungary, Poland, and the Republic of Korea. I think this multinational expansion and the increasing level of experience among the fellows demonstrates the value and the importance of this program. It highlights the need for alliances and partnerships across the world based on our shared values of individual liberty, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. These unite a diverse group of allies and partners in our drive to secure peace. This program was founded because security and true peace cannot be achieved if half of humanity's potential is not heard. Women must have a seat at the decision-making tables, not because it is just required, but because research constantly shows that inclusive teams make better decisions and develop long-lasting, more creative solutions. So let all who want to serve their country do it, based on their individual skills, capabilities, and potential. Over the past 4 weeks, during this strategic leadership program, we have worked closely together, learned a lot, and reflected deeply. As mentioned, we have visited 5 cities, had over 30 meetings, and flown more than 5,000 miles. We have tackled various themes from innovation, climate change, AI, emerging technologies, and how they affect defense, democracy, and security. This program has further enhanced our strategic thinking and leadership skills, but more importantly, it has enabled us to build a global network. A network of trusted colleagues that we can and will rely on in this complex security environment of cross-border, cross-sector, and cross-cultural threats. We, the 2025 cohort, are truly thankful to Halifax under the leadership of Peter van Praag for the opportunity to build this strong and reliable network and to increase our knowledge and insight across multiple security topics and through different lenses, including policy and governance, academics, industry, and non-governmental organizations. But our special thanks and heartfelt thanks go to the program managers Michaela Tucker and Kimberly Whitehead for their unlimited support, guidance, and patience. They created this extensive program, including many high-level meetings, both in Canada and in the United States. We are also sincerely grateful to our governments and militaries for their unwavering support, which enabled us to participate in this incredible program. Their support created the time and space for us to learn, to reflect, and to connect. And certainly, we would also like to thank all the senior military, political, business, technology, and thought leaders who gave their valuable time and shared their insights quite openly. Ladies and gentlemen, the security challenges of today do not respect borders. These threats arise from human actions, technological development, and natural causes. And as we have heard during this forum, at the same time, democracies around the world are under pressure. From disinformation to autocracy, from polarization to the erosion of institutions, the challenges are complex and cross-border. Cyber attacks, climate-driven crises, and hybrid threats. None of these challenges can be solved by a single country, a single military, or a single institution. So the question we must ask is not only how do we protect our societies, but also how do we ensure and strengthen the cooperation. Throughout this 4-week program, we have repeatedly returned to the same topics: democracy, security, and peace. History has taught us that strong democracies are safe societies, not because they are perfect, but because they have the mechanisms to correct themselves, because they create space for dialogue. Power is not exercised quietly behind the closed doors, but under the light of public accountability. Security and democracy are therefore not separate domains. They are inseparable. We all know that today there is an urgent need for us all to strengthen our defense capabilities. the military vacuum will eventually be filled whether we want it or not. For example, in the Arctic region. So we should fill them responsibly. But at the same time, security cannot only rely on defense. The defense of countries, allies, and partnerships require the capabilities and support of their societies. Only a resilient society is able to face and recover from the diverse threats, even from the worst possible threat, war. Therefore, security has to be approached from a more holistic perspective, including the whole of society. In addition to defense capability, we have to secure all the vital functions, whether they are related to leadership, cooperation, internal security, economy, infrastructure, security of supply, or functional capacity and psychological resilience of the population, including education. In Finland, we call this approach comprehensive security. This requires collaboration, both internally and internationally, and collaboration is based on trust. But this trust is not automatic. It is built through dialogue, through partnership, and through taking responsibility even when it's really difficult. To have the courage to ask challenging questions, to continue building bridges, even when the world seems intent on building walls. This fellowship is an example of that responsibility. It creates connections that will strengthen our work in the future wherever we serve. As future alumni, we continue our journey with our own countries, with our own forces, and then in the years to come, return to share our knowledge, effort, and vision to inspire others that come after us. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, democracy grows when we dare to speak. Trust emerges when we dare to listen. Security and peace are achieved when we learn to balance the two. But ultimately, this all takes the will to care, to participate, and take responsibility. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Susan Bonner. I am a journalist with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and I host a daily news program called Your World Tonight. Watching that video, and listening to the talk this weekend, I wonder if we should sometimes put a disclaimer at the beginning of our newscast that says, indecent exposure may occur. With that, let's begin our panel. We have an esteemed panel of guests. On my right, Sean Fraser, who is the Justice Minister and Attorney General for Canada. And beside him, we have Peter Sanchez, who is the Minister of Defense in Colombia. Next, Rashan Abbas, who is the Executive Director for the Campaign for Uyghurs. And Senator Kevin Kramer from the state of North Dakota. So my plan with this panel is to get to the floor as quickly as possible. I know that we've all been listening a lot over the last 3 days, and we want to get as many voices into the conversation as possible. But if I could start with each of you giving your thoughts on how you view the concept of decency in democracy, how you would define it, and how you would define its importance. Minister Fraser.
Yeah, look, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to participate. When I reflect on the theme of the discussion, I think about democracy demanding decency, both in terms of inputs and outputs. And before I specify what I mean, I think it's important that we actually ask ourselves, what does democracy mean to us? It's an awful lot more than a system of voting to me. It's a means by how we organize our society, how we make decisions, particularly in countries like Canada that have a rich diversity across regions, across cultures, across languages. We need to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to have a say, even though not everybody's always going to get their way. This demands that, from an endpoint point of view, governments and political actors protect the institutions that people can rely upon, ensuring there's respect for the rule of law, for transparent decision-making, accountability at the ballot box, but also in between elections by reporting to an elected legislature. But it also engages outputs. People aren't going to continue to believe in democracies if they see their standard of living fall. They need to see, as the economy grows, that they share benefits in that economic growth. And it's important too, just to maybe tie off the point, because I don't want to dominate this conversation, this isn't just about what governments deliver for people, but how people engage with one another. In today's world, we too often treat people that we disagree with as our opponents and enemies rather than our friends and neighbors. We are constantly fed in today's world through algorithms, perspectives that seek to confirm our biases rather than challenge our perspectives. This is a long stretch from the world I grew up in when my parents would have friends over at the kitchen table. They'd have vigorous debates, but at the end of it, they'd go about cleaning up the dishes, taking care of the kids, and helping out one another in their community. To the extent that we can see people we disagree with as our neighbors who have a different point of view, I think that level of decency will improve not only the institutions that serve us, but the outcomes that we enjoy.
Minister Sanchez, your thoughts.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. From my view, decency in democracy, looking to the armed forces, I will say 4 things. First of all, is decency in democracy means moral and respect for the law. In that case, the armed forces is the moral backbone of the democracy. Decency is no principle or political principle, that is military imperative. Second one, decency in democracy, using by the armed forces, give us legitimacy. That is the big difference between criminal groups and armed forces. Third one is armed forces are the shield of polarization. We are living in one world that we watch in that video, and when the armed forces remained as non-participant or not participate in the political discussion, etc., that is the guarantee to protect all citizens, doesn't matter the ideology and other things. And the last one is we are living in a new era, the era of the intelligence artificial. That technology cannot replace our responsibility. Maybe the technology can help us to make decisions, but not to replace responsibility. So decency in this moment is important to keep the armed forces as a backbone or moral backbone of the democracy. It's necessary to keep the legitimacy. It's necessary to be the shield of polarization, and it's necessary to keep the responsibility in using the armed forces.
Ms. Abbas.
Thank you so much, Peter and the Halifax team, for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it because we don't have a lot of chance to tell our stories. So democracy means for my people survival, life, and the future. Let me just tell you a little bit about my personal story. Take a couple minutes here. I am Uyghur and living in the United States since 1989. I was raised, born, and educated in Rimchi before I came, after I graduated when I was 21 years old. And I did not know anyone in the US. I didn't speak any English. I came because I was looking for freedom and democracy, which I found in the United States. But living in the United States in the last 36 years did not save me from the CCP's retaliation. I escaped from the communist regime, but they followed me to the United States. Recently, last 8 years, the Uyghurs are facing full-fledged active genocide with mass detention, families scattered, and our identity and the language and religion are forsaken. Children, 1 million Uyghur children are taken. Uyghur women are facing forced sterilization, forced abortion, and forcibly marrying Han Chinese men. Yet, the democracies, the world, are standing still without taking the real action. I have my dear friend here, Tancho Gaitso and the Lapsang Sangay from Tibetan community. They all know very well that China started this in Tibet, the dystopian surveillance system and the mass eradication of culture and religion. Then they expanded and perfected in my homeland, and while using my people and my homeland as a testing ground. Then they demolished the democracy in Hong Kong in front of everyone's watch. We stood and did nothing. The democracies did not defend the freedom and the democracy. And now threatening Taiwan. And what's next? All of you, everyone will be next, because China's goal and the mission is not just the staying within China's borders and just what they are doing to the Uyghurs, Tibetans, or Southern Mongolians and the Hong Kongers, but its goal to implement this to all over the world. And I speak here at the cost of my own sister's freedom. In September 2018, I participated in a panel like this at Hudson Institute. I was working as a International Business Development Director. I was not even full-time activist. I told my boss that I'll be back in a couple hours. But that day changed my life. When I spoke that, which was televised on YouTube, when I spoke about China's genocidal policies, outlining the fate of my in-laws, 24 people from my husband's family went missing. The Chinese government took my sister, Dr. Gulshan Abbas. She's in jail now since September 2018 for my freedom of speech as an Uyghur American. She's a retired medical doctor. But almost 2,000 years, I wake up with her, I go to bed with her, I go around and tell her story while I'm trying to warn the world the China threat. But I see many people still staying silently. The decency, the topic today, is supposed to be courage, honor, and speak out even if there are consequences. It's easy to criticize the United States, Israel, or anywhere else. When you speak about atrocities in the world, you don't speak about the Uyghurs. You don't speak about China's atrocities. What does that mean? For leaders, for countries, this is not just about the moral clarity or courage or conscience anymore. This is about your own sovereignty, because silence is the oxygen of the tyranny. Thank you.
Senator Kramer, your thoughts on our topic of decency. Democracy demands decency. How do you view that?
Well, first of all, I was an average basketball player in high school, and if we had a 20-point lead and there was 2 minutes left, the coach would say, "Get in there and try not to screw this thing up." Thanks a lot for putting me right behind her. That's anyway. I mean, that's pretty. Anyway, well, one of Kramer's convictions is I don't offend easily, which can sometimes make me offensive. But your message is very important, because we talk about decency and watching that rather indecent video. And
Why
as well
do
as
you
the earlier,
see it as indecent, sir?
because this has become an absolute throw every arrow you can at Donald Trump while we feel entitled to everything he has. And that's not a great way to build friendships. Remember what I just said. I will offend, but I'm not easily offended. But your point is very important. Is decency what words we choose, or is it what we stand for? I suspect that the Christians, and I know that the early video, early in this forum, said that our liberty doesn't come from God, it comes from people. Well, our Declaration of Independence in the United States disagrees with that. And I think the Christians in Nigeria today are probably feeling pretty good about Donald Trump's position. And maybe he's a bit blunt and even a bit brutal at times, but at least he's fighting the right fights. Having said all of that, I'm going to go back to the beginning. As we prepare to celebrate in the United States Thanksgiving in a few days, I celebrate in a rather special way. I am the 10th great-grandson of William Bradford, the governor of Plymouth Colony for about 20 plus years, the best documenter of the voyage of the Mayflower, who writes in his journals that are now a book, as I'm sure many of you know, about the voyage and how the Mayflower Compact came to be. It came to be because there was, as they were getting close to disembarking, about half of the crew, at least, if not more, that were starting to celebrate the fact that they were about to have complete freedom. They absolutely had to answer to no one. As they came from England, they now had literally no one to be accountable to. And it quickly became obvious that the leaders of the Pilgrims had to have a document. And they institutionalized 199 words to help govern free people. But he also writes about an incredible episode where, as crew members who were not Pilgrims, who were not separatists, were getting ill, that it was the separatists that were taking care of them, that were caring for them, that were loving on them, that were praying for them, providing for their needs. And that example of Christian decency actually caught on. That even among the crew members, that the example of that the firsthand experience with decency was, if not converting them, at the very least taming them. I sit here with two of my very best friends in the Senate, who not only do we work together, not only are we all three on the Armed Services Committee of the United States Senate, but we pray together every Wednesday as part of the Senate prayer breakfast. We don't even all agree theologically or doctrinally, but we do love each other. I worry that there's not enough example of that. And I also worry that most of our constituents, in our form of democracy in the United States, which is different than pretty much everyone else's, we elect our president. We don't have a prime minister. We have three co-equal branches, I guess, and that gets tested from time to time. But at the end, it always works out. But Angus is an expert on Abraham Lincoln, and if you ever want to hear a great presentation on the second inaugural address, I recommend Angus King. He knows all 700 words pretty well. But Lincoln, long before he became president, was worried about the erosion of the institutions of government. In 1828, or 1838, at the age of 28, this young lawyer gave a speech called the Lyceum speech. It was one of his longer speeches. I guess he got much more efficient with time as his speeches got shorter and more efficient. 270 words, the Gettysburg Address. Anyway, but the Lyceum speech was him anticipating mob rule if we didn't maintain the institutions that the founders gave. Remember, the founders were just dying off. They were just, the last of them were just sort of dying off. And he was concerned that leaders in this new free world didn't want to plow old ground. They always wanted to, take it on themselves. And his plea was to maintain those institutions. He did it very eloquently, and frankly, he said that if we lose this freedom, it will be suicide.
Well, if I could stay with you on some of the points you've raised there, Senator. You talk about it's not, don't judge us on just what we say, but on what we do. And
I didn't quite say that, but okay.
That was the gist of it, if
Sure.
not your exact words. Do you think that the atmospherics of what is being said in our democracies can sort of change the actuality? And by that I mean that in that climate of anything goes talks and the kinds of things we saw on the video, that does alienate members of society. It erodes trust in democratic institutions, which you've just talked about being so important in Lincoln's speech.
Yeah, certainly words matter. Certainly they do, but before we mourn the death of democracy in America, let's not forget he did oversee a civil war where 700,000 Americans killed each other. And here we are today. That we are far more resilient than we think or than we fear. But words do matter, for sure they do. And how we receive words matter. But what was missing from that video were things like a weekly revelation of new subpoenas on, issued by the previous administration on members of Congress on their phone records simply because they were Republican. That's a problem. That's indecent. It may not be a harsh word, but it's a pretty vicious weapon of the legal system that was used, and we continue to, like I said, find new revelations of what was going on. So, yeah, I think our words matter. I try to pick mine carefully, but I'm also not afraid to confront the issue.
Each of the three panelists here have some, shall we say, issues with America at the moment. Do you see, how would you put decency into the equation of dealing with America on your major issues? Mr. Fraser.
Yeah, look, obviously we've had a disruption to a long-standing trading relationship that's causing concern for businesses that do cross-border trade, for workers who rely on those economic outcomes. But I want to take a long view of the relationships that we build, foster, and maintain on the global stage. The United States has been Canada's strongest ally and largest trading partner for a very long time. The issues in my own household are somewhat more complicated, my wife being a dual citizen, of course. So we get a healthy dose of American politics in our dinner table conversations. But realistically, I think if we can better focus on our shared priorities and try to figure out how we can advance them by working together, by maintaining open dialogue with one another, that's the kind of thing that will speak to my earlier point. People need to see these outcomes actually land within their own households. And though when you see a policy decision taken in another country you might disagree with, you might see a policy decision taken that impacts your ability, you should feel free to be able to address it head on, to advance competing ideas. But you should be careful not to blow up a relationship that has existed for the entirety of our history. If the short-term political interest is reactionary in nature in order to speak to a narrow slice of the electorate to serve your own political interests, but you do damage in the long term, what you're going to end up seeing as people experience diminished quality of life outcomes, they're going to turn not to someone who defends the institutions, but to some future populist leader who will be empowered by an erosion of our norms and our rights today, who will say, well, let's pull ourselves out of this system altogether. And I don't think that that is a healthy outcome in the long term. So when it comes to dealing with not just the United States, but partners around the world, we have to recognize that we've built a system on purpose through the development of independent institutions, international institutions, domestic institutions, that allows us to peacefully disagree, to share openly the concerns that we have with one another, make decisions that respectively serve the interests of our constituents and our citizens. But if we move away one iota from the goal of working together to advance shared prosperity, the long-term outcome is that people will threaten to pull themselves out of these systems and institutions that have protected peace and prosperity really for the better part of the past 3/4 of a century.
Minister Sanchez, in your country, a very big problem clearly is crime focused on drugs. And as you watch the world look at your country and how you're dealing with it and how that issue is being framed in America and elsewhere, how do you view the idea of negotiating on those terms?
First of all, I was thinking maybe the world 18 or 8 decades ago, nowadays, comparing with that era, nowadays the world is more conflictive than before, but the people who die in the war is less. Two reasons, I think so. First of all, the thoughts, the beliefs that the people conflict each other, and another part, the rule, the war, the rule, the law of the war, make that the people don't die as before. But talking about strategy, ends, way, and means, maybe we have the same ends. For instance, with the United States, we are thinking to defeat the drugs, to defeat the international crime. Maybe the difference is between the ways, the strategies. So in that aspect, it's necessary to talk each other, to talk honestly, to talk with decency, to find the problem. I think that the enemy is not the nations. The enemy is the international crime. So it's necessary to strengthen the international cooperation to defeat the international crime. How to deal in this area is talking or giving these spaces to talk and sharing information. We are thinking also to develop one initiative similar to the NATO, but against to the international crime. That means sharing information, that means talking in the same language, that means using the same techniques and procedures to defeat the international crime.
Does it also mean it also means in your situation, dealing with a situation that you did not ask for off your coast? How does that factor into how you look at this topic of decency in democracy?
Could you say in other words, please?
The situation that Colombia and Venezuela are facing in international waters from the United States as it proposes a solution to deal with the drug crime. How do you think about that vis-a-vis the subject of decency in democracy?
I am the Minister of Defense. I am not the President, but I will say each country has the sovereignty to apply its own forces to defend its values, its ends, its people. In the case of Colombia and Venezuela, we are fighting, in the case of Colombia, we are fighting very hard against the international crime. We share a lot of information with the United States. The last week, the President of Colombia was talking with all agencies, intelligence agencies that we have in Colombia, to be clear that we share information only to apply the force according to the international law. We share information through the Defense Department of the States, and we apply all procedures in that way. But of course, the United States has the sovereignty, has the autonomy to use its power, to use its capability, and when we see for instance, the strike against vessels that's happened in international waters, not in Colombian waters. So we are focusing just only to affect the terrorist group in our territory, using our weapons, respecting the law, and sharing information with all agencies to defeat the terrorist groups, the drugs.
Senator Kramer, would you like to comment on this issue?
I would, because for those of you who don't know, Minister Sanchez, he's a hero. Besides being a minister, he's a hero. And I'm just gonna recommend you look that up. But one of the things that impresses me so much about Minister Sanchez is that he, and he articulated it now just now quite well, and that he has clearly a responsibility and a shared mission in sharing information, helping the United States and others in the hemisphere combat the scourge of illegal drugs, which, by the way, a lot of presidents have said they would do. But he also never loses sight of his first priority, which is to protect the sovereignty and the security of his own people. And he does the two together with, I think, great skill. So thank you for that. That was my only thought as he was talking.
Well, would you like to expand a little on how you see him as a hero?
Well, I think we only have 23 minutes, but he saved in a very heroic way a young girl. It's a rather well-known story, and I would recommend you look it up, huh?
Yes, he loved me. I served in the military forces during 35 years. I was the commander of the Joint Special Forces in Colombia. And we conducted one mission, maybe someone knows about that. Do you remember the 4 children lost in the jungle during 40 days? I was the commander of that operation. And that showed us the most important thing that you have in the military power is the willingness, is the faith, is the persistence, not the means, not the access.
I think maybe we'll open it up to the floor now. I'll start here, if we could.
Thank you very much. Senator, you said the Christians in Nigeria today are probably feeling good about Donald Trump. So I'm a Christian from Nigeria.
You're an expert.
1 out of 100 million Christians, very small sample size. I do not feel good about Donald Trump. He called Nigeria a disgraced country. Frankly speaking, that's not so bad because he used to call us a shithole country. So it's a kind of improvement on disgraced countries is an improvement. Is there a better way, for instance, a decent way to offer help to someone? So if I looked at all the shoes on this panel, and you guys are wearing nice suits, everybody is wearing nice suits, but there's a differentiation of shoes. The senator's shoe is different. So if I was your friend, after this panel, I would buy you a gift, a nice shoe to match up with your suit. I wouldn't have to say anything about the state of your shoes that made me buy you those shoes. Is there a way that powerful countries can help less powerful countries, poor countries, without doing it in the way that leaves them worse off? For instance, America went to Libya. Libya has a causative effect on the terrorism challenges that Nigeria and the Sahel is facing. I don't want to talk about the other places America went to. Let's just stick it to Nigeria. Since Donald Trump said what he said for Nigerian Christians, Christians have been abducted in the church in the northwest of Nigeria.
Sure.
Muslim students have been abducted. I do not speak to the causation, but there's a correlation between Donald Trump, from the point Donald Trump spoke about Nigeria's challenges and the escalation of terrorism. So, decency apart, there are rules of engagement. There's a global rules order. There's a rules-based global order. Is there a way to speak about Nigeria, first of all, in a respectful, decent way, not even just as president of America, but as a human being? and much more so as the President of the United States of America, that I will always respect as a person, and frankly speaking, Nigerians continue to respect generally. Also, is there a way to help Nigeria? Because, for instance, one of the reasons why we failed woefully at fighting terrorism was because despite having the money, despite having the intention and the motivation to buy weapons from America for so many years, we were denied. Eventually, we got them, and for some of those weapons, they also told them where not to use those weapons.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to ask and sit down, is there a way to decently help Nigeria without making things worse and without disrespecting Nigerian Christians and Muslims?
Thank you very
Yeah, yeah.
much. No, I think that
Great question. No doubt the answer to your question is certainly. And I want to address both things. First of all, the words do matter. They do. You were kind in suggesting, is there a way to do to some things and not needing, to make things worse by the wrong words? The right words help. A more delicate way of saying something is obviously better than a more brutal way. That said, at the end of the day, a lot of people have promised things to Nigeria and several African nations. And by the way, once again, I point to my colleagues who are two of the biggest advocates for our relationship with Africa. And I won't go into all the ways that they do that or that we do it together. But the actions do matter. A lot of people will say the right thing and do the wrong thing. Other people will maybe say the wrong thing and mean to do the right thing. Is there a better way? Certainly. But one thing, your example is very specific and it's appropriate in your case. But you also touched on a larger issue of it's not just one country. It's not just one-on-one. There was an earlier panel, I forget which one, that got to the point of, and it might have even been Senator King, I don't remember, but one of the senators spoke to America's retreat. I think it might have been Tom Tillis, now I think of it, America's retreat from several areas, which has left them vulnerable to the predators, if you will, to China especially, and their predatory financing and behavior. There are lots of ways, and I think, for example, one of the areas where President Trump and I have disagreed quite openly is in the effective use of USAID. Those things need to be conformed, for sure. But when we talk about democracy, and I talk about the difference in the United States as being more self-governed, he is a reflection of the country. All of our democracies, democratically elected leaders are a reflection of their country. And that's the pastoral role they should play at the higher level. But at the governing level, I think, globally speaking, aid to friends and would-be friends and possible friends is a bargain compared to munitions. And I just think we need to be more directly engaged in your challenges.
we're going to go over to this side of the room, and as the microphone makes its way, I would just say that you talk about the president being a reflection of the country. America is very polarized, as are many democracies.
Yeah.
And do you believe, I guess we can further this discussion about whether and how decency, the erosion of decency in our national and international conversations, has led to the polarization. Democracy creates the conditions for polarization. And does it also offer the solutions, perhaps through decency,
Sure.
to get us back on track in a open conversation? But
Sure.
before you comment on that, perhaps we can weave it into, I think, a question over here.
Thank you. I'm Ariel Montatos. I'm Mexican-American. I'm the chief correspondent in the United States for Televisa. First of all, I would like to say that I think we should be grateful and recognize the presence here of the senator, because it's important to have different point of views. And secondly, Senator, you were saying that words matter, and that Donald Trump, in this case, is fighting the right battle. Let me take the example of Ukraine. Making peace in Ukraine, ending the war in Ukraine, is the right battle. But if Donald Trump is calling President Zelensky a dictator and is giving the side through words and through actions to Vladimir Putin, that is the right battle, but it's being fought let's say, in a way in which it's making it worse. Do you agree with that? Do you think that that is what's happening in the case of President Trump, that he might have the right objectives, but that his ways are actually making things worse? Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I don't know that whether they are or they are not, but remember, for 3 years, the United States offered sort of lip service and some defensive weapons with strict restrictions on how to use them. And at a time when we, several 100,000 deaths ago could have maybe brought an end to this war, we did a lot of talking. The negotiations that are going on right now, which is what I suspect you're talking about, make no mistake, in my mind, and it is crystal clear to me, and I entertain in my office Ukrainian leaders just at least monthly, if not more often than that. I am 100% on the side of Ukraine on this. There's one perpetrator and there's one victim. But every life, whether it be Russian or Ukraine, matters. And so the president's, and you articulated it well, his goal of ending the war is genuine, it is sincere, and he wants to stop the killing of everybody. Whether it's making it worse or not, I don't know, because what I don't know and what you don't know, what none of us know, and what frustrates the media to no end is that none of us know exactly what's being negotiated and who's asking for what. We presume when we read a certain line in a certain document that it's the Russians asking for this. And it may very well be that the fatigue in Ukraine is something different. One thing's for sure, you guys, one thing we have to celebrate today in this forum is that the decision on whether to agree or not agree is between one country and another country. The rest of us are just facilitators. Now, some of us maybe matter more than others. I argued with President Biden over greenlighting the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, which I think became a very valuable weapon for Vladimir Putin, and we handed him the bullets. It was silly. But that said, I don't know whether it's being helpful or not being helpful, but I am confident that both sides want to come to a resolution. And the first thing we need is a ceasefire. I don't even know how you really have a good negotiation, frankly, without a ceasefire.
Well, on the issue of a good negotiation, does it not start with respect, and is respect not paired with decency?
Well, remember the players, certainly it is, but at the same time, we don't know the tactics that are being used. And I think we oftentimes think we do. I mean, all the advice that President Zelensky is getting from people around here this week is fascinating, except none of them are the president of Ukraine.
Let's go to a question over here in the middle. Sir, in the second aisle. Yes. We need to get our other panelists in on the discussion. The senator is in the hot seat.
Ms. Abbas,
and we'll bring them in. Yes.
I'll try that. Yeah, I'm Lobsang Sengye, Tibetan lecturer at Harvard Law School. As my sister Roshan said, there is crime against humanity and genocide going on in Xinjiang or East Turkestan. And they tabled a resolution at the United Nations. 49 countries voted for Uyghurs. 150 countries, including Nigeria, Global South, they voted against. UN Human Rights Commissioner has come out with a report saying there is crime against humanity going on in Uyghur people. All the third world countries deny it. I have also been a Prime Minister of Tibetan government exile. We tried to move resolution at the United Nations. All the third world countries, they vote against you, saying there is no human rights violation in Tibet. Can you imagine? Which is more indecent? Few words matter. Indecent, it's hurtful. But to deny that there is crime against humanity going on, as per the report of the UN Human Rights Commission by all the third world countries and in Tibet, that's more indecent. I think we all need to acknowledge. For that, sometimes, of course, there is double standard in the present world order, including the US. Including European countries, we lobby. Some people meet with you, some people don't meet with you, some people deny you entry into the foreign ministries. I accept all that. But the freedom-based world order that we have now, where we can stand and talk and criticize senator, can I do that in China? I can't enter the room. I will be in jail before I get here. So we must acknowledge, and then the other countries to support that China. As though it's better than the present world order. I think that's the most indecent thing you can say or do.
Thank you for that question. And yes.
Yes, that is the beauty of the democracy that we are talking about. We can sit and criticize the senator and a country or president, nothing happens to us. And I just told you that when I criticize China from United States, from Washington, my sister is paying the price. So the problem here is not just the countries and the leaders don't have the courage to speak about the Uyghur atrocity or criticize China. They deliberately actually enabling China's economy to murder more people when they continuously supporting China's forced labor transfer. The Uyghurs are being taken as slaves. Like I mentioned yesterday when I asked the question, just last year, this atrocity is not ended. Just the last year alone, 3.34 million Uyghurs transferred to China proper, working in all these famous brand names from all over the Western democracies, basically supporting the companies as a supply, manufacturing the supply chains. So basically, my sister may have made the shirt on your back, the shoes you are wearing, the purse you are carrying. When we look at the history, and the last couple of days we saw this a lot on the videos and all that, it happened before. And there is a vow, never again. So do we have the decency and the courage to uphold the vow, never again, with the real actions to follow? Or are we going to witness the repeat of the 1938 Munich Pact in the sake of economy? Because when those leaders, and from Muslim countries, when China is calling faith is a mental disease, criminalizing every aspect of normal practice of Islam, when the Muslims cannot speak out when they list all the atrocities, they don't say anything about Uyghurs. And the leaders too. Some of them, they don't say it because they just simply forget it or they don't want to say it. Or some of them are afraid of pronouncing it because it's difficult to pronounce. It's Uyghur. And some of them are purposefully just the appeasement to Chinese government. So we need to think about, this is not just about the Uyghurs anymore, as I mentioned. It's about the world that we leave behind for our children and for our grandchildren, because we are all responsible for what happens next. If we don't speak out now, then the only voice left will be one of regret. I want to finish it with Xi Jinping's direct quote translated from Chinese. 2-3 years ago, Xi Jinping's speech, this particular quote was promoted a lot. He said, I quote, "It must be that the fate of all people in the world is the same." What does that mean? They do not tolerate for so-called, statistically, they say we are 12 million Uyghurs. Because of the language we speak, the religion we believe, and the look, how we look, how do they tolerate for democracies or everyone else? So when I say everyone is next, I am not saying this lightly. I know how it is to live in an authoritarian system like China. So we need to defend the freedom with decency and the courage. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to the floor. The young man here. You can arm wrestle.
I'm Nicola from Italy, and I'm 15-15 winner. How can we ensure decency in democracies if political competitions are increasingly relying on disinformation, manipulation, and digital outrages instead of truth-based dialogue? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think your seatmate here wants to add to it.
Yeah, Nicholas from 15 at 15 too, and from Ecuador. And how can we guarantee decency if these leaders that have come to power are convicted criminals, demonized media, or ex-guerrillas?
Okay, well, let's deal with the disinformation and the changing world in which we do not agree on the truth, let alone the way we should talk to each other. Minister Fraser, what are your thoughts? How do you think about that?
Yeah, look, I think about it often, and I alluded to this in my remarks. Increasingly, we're divided into camps based on things we believe. We tend to consume the same media as our immediate circles, and we, less often than I would like, actually have competing ideas come to a head for people to consider the perspective of one another. There's a couple principles at play here that I think we need to remind ourselves of. One of the hallmarks of democracy is the ability for people to participate in these conversations freely, to share their perspectives, knowing that they won't face some unreasonable consequence as a result of their actions. The flip side of that equation is we're free to ignore the people that we don't wish to listen to, and instead engage on our own terms. This problem is going to dramatically increase as we have technology adoption happening at a pace that is far quicker than governments traditionally have the ability to adopt laws and response. But what it comes down to me is protecting the freedom for people to participate in these conversations, but putting institutions in place to actually make sure that we have the ability to know the difference between what's real and what's fake, knowing that we have protections for an independent media that isn't going to be subjected to the erosion of their freedom to participate in the political marketplace and political conversations by governments who would instead prefer state-controlled media. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure that citizens have the opportunity to become educated about the issues from reliable sources of information. Some of the institutions that I think will help with that is obviously investments in public education, but in addition, the protection of the independence of the media and the courts to sort out, based on evidence, facts, science, and data, what is true. If we can't disagree on what facts are real, we have no hope to sort through collectively very challenging subjects. So to me, it's maintaining the freedoms for people to take part in conversations, putting institutions in place that will allow the Canadian public in our country, but the public in any country, to understand what the real facts are on a given issue.
Can I ask you, splitting off from this just a little bit, we've explored decency in terms of its effect on how citizens view their democracy. We've explored it in terms of, very powerfully, the human rights question. What about national security and the questions of sovereignty? And you know why I'm asking you that, because it's become a sore point in this country with our citizens.
Certainly, and that was a central theme of the last federal election campaign, was some of the commentary that around Canada becoming a 51st state, which Conservative, Liberal, NDP, that's not something that Canadians are comfortable with. Over the course of my life, we've often defined ourselves on being different than our closest friend and neighbor, being distinctly Canadian in many ways, as other countries I'm sure would as well. But let's not pretend that these issues of sovereignty are a uniquely Canadian or American concern. We're talking about decency and democracy and protecting our institutions at a time when there's a member of the UN Security Council who is sitting in open defiance of the very values that underpin the UN Charter. These are not light decisions around unique policies. These are the deep values of sovereignty, of territorial integrity, of self-determination of peoples. And if we don't have the institutions to be able to stand up to these egregious violations and norms of international law, then I have a suggested project that we should take on collectively. The reality is, if we bake rights into our laws, domestically, nationally, internationally, and they exist on paper but are not enjoyed in our communities, then those laws are not worth the paper on which they are written. We need to have institutions that we jealously guard, who can independently, whether it's recognizing the reports of special rapporteurs of the UN, whether it is holding people who commit human rights atrocities to account in international criminal law, or whether it's having the opportunity for individual citizens to have their complaints adjudicated, or national governments to have an independent trade dispute resolution mechanism. Without these institutions, the decency will not be possible in a democracy, because democracy will simply fade away.
The Canadians have run out the clock, folks. We've come to the end of our excellent panel, and it's a huge subject, and we just really skimmed the surface. But I think we did it in a way that will keep us all talking and thinking about it. So thank you very much to the panelists and to the conference members. Thank you very much.
Please join us for a coffee break in the foyer. HFS delegates, please join us in the auditorium. Our program will begin in just a few minutes. HFS delegates, please join us in the auditorium. Our program will begin in just a few minutes. HFS delegates, please join us in the auditorium. Our program will begin in just a few minutes. Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Our program will begin now.
I'm gonna ask the winners to stand up. Oh, Deanna, Marilyn, Nicolo, Nicholas, Tim. Congratulations. Thank you for being here. You made the weekend much stronger for all of us. Thank you. I'll just say Deanna. Okay, that's it. Just so you know, Deanna, Marilyn, there she is, Nicolo, Nicholas, and Tim. There he is. There he is.
Democracies decide destiny. That's going to be our topic to wrap up. This is the capstone, so thank you all for staying through the full Halifax Security Forum. Part of the question is, do we have what it takes for democracies to decide destiny? And I think what we saw, Peter, it was brilliant to start this closing session with the 15 by 15, to see the intergenerational power that comes from unleashing those with the freedom to create and free societies. We don't know which problems you're going to solve. We don't know what you're going to create. But it is how we harness our own people, their potential to shape destiny. But we also do it in a way that you're going to see through this panel, that democracies have to be serious about their security and defense, and they have to be curious about how we unleash the potential of our people and engage civilians in this cause as well. So I'm Damon Wilson. I'm the president of the National Endowment for Democracy. And we have the honor of supporting brave freedom fighters in a peaceful way around the world. I really want to start this panel by acknowledging that Halifax has done something special. Democracy has always been a guiding principle for the debates here in Halifax. That's why many of you come back. But this year, democracy is the agenda. And it's the agenda of an organization that brings you together not just to listen to these conversations, but to put you to work and understanding that the whole purpose of this is how do democracies work together to solve problems? How do we enhance strategic cooperation among today's world's democracies? And that takes our official leaders, our military commanders, and it takes those who are elected officials and those who are active and mobilize of our citizens in our private sector. Democracy works. Democracy has shaped destiny. We, those on the older side of the spectrum here, have the experience of having seen that paid off in the 20th century, having seen how, facing defeat, democracies rallied, World War I, World War II, the Cold War, shaping the future. Many of us then felt the optimism of what was really the development of a third democratic wave of freedom globally. But you, our 15 at 15, we now are living in a different era. It's not just 2 decades of a democratic recession. It's 2 decades of an authoritarian assault on fundamental freedoms and democracy. And that's what we're going to try to unpack here, that as Peter wrote in the opening letter for this forum, each generation will often hear from tyrants, from populists that offer a better way, a better alternative to democracy. It is never the truth. And as Maria Ressa wrote in the cover introduction for this final discussion, if we don't have those facts and the truth to understand that democracy is not perfect, yet self-correcting, it is better than all the alternatives, if we can't accept that truth ourselves, we're going to have trouble ensuring that our nations, our free nations, the free world shapes destiny, decides destiny. So that's the conversation we're going to have here today about the connection between our security, our defense, and the cause of our own democracy, and the support and the advance of freedom and keeping us secure. And to do that, we've got an extraordinary panel that brings together our military and civilian voices. Admiral Giuseppe Cavo-Dragoni, who is the chairman of the NATO military commander, the former chief of defense of Italy, has joined us, along with my colleague, Dr. Tamara Kaufman-Wittes, the president of the National Democratic Institute, one of the core institutes that the NED has the joy of supporting around the world. Leslie Orbitz, who is an incredibly motivated and motivating political actor, civic leader in Ukraine, who is a former member of parliament and the founder of the Price of Freedom, advocating for air defense in Ukraine. And finally, General Sean Clancy. It's a real honor to have the EU Military Committee chair along with us, to have the first Irish general in that position in the European Union. So I want to kick off our conversation by coming back to how we think about recognizing that our security and defense of democracies and our work in supporting and advancing democracies are intertwined. They're mutually reinforcing. And maybe I could start with our military commanders first to talk a little bit about how you are taking steps now in this really different era to ensure the defense of our democracies in the European Union, the member states of the European Union, of the NATO allies, and defending freedom when the challenges that you are charged with defending our societies against are coming in many different forms, many that were not originally thought of as the purview of military commanders. Can you please kick us off, sir?
I will, of course, Damon. Thank you. Good morning, or is it good afternoon at this stage to everybody? Thank you. And can I just say at the outset, congratulations to all of you to be here at the very end. You know, it's a testament to your endurance and your resilience, but I think it's also a reflection of the hugely significant importance of the Halifax and actually the teams that have gone right through it that has kept people engaged throughout. So thank you all for that. Your question is, I think, very valid, and it covers so much. I think it comes down to 3 pillars. It's about actually renewing our resilience and what that means. It's about reinforcing our capabilities. And it's in reinforcing our unity, more importantly, because I think when we look at the theme of democracies heading towards our destiny, we're under an incredible stress test right now as a democracies. We have come from a bipolar world momentarily into a unipolar world, and now we're in a multipolar, contested world and an environment where we see also a kind of a backsliding in democracy internally, which is causing increased levels of polarization. So I suppose that's the context, the way we look at it, and how has that actually come to fruition then is that our rivals and others, they will take advantage of the fractions that come out of that. And they will use digital manipulation, influence operations, and of course strategically then they will try to interfere or intimidate. And this is the context, I guess, that the military response combined with the civil response and the civil military society is coming more and more to the fore. And this is not something new. Everyone in the military uniform here will recognize Clausewitz's triangle: the people, the government, and the military. That's 200 years old. And from a European point of view, it's going back to basics. And this is what the White Paper on Defence, it's what the Preparedness Union strategy and the roadmap that has come thereafter. It's focusing on civil and military society. It's focusing on resilience, readiness, and preparedness. Because the world today is borderless when it comes to the hybrid activities that we see and how they're manifesting and how they're impacting on us all every day. Yes, the battleground that we are all focused on, and has been a lot over this few days, has been in Ukraine. This is the physical battleground. But the strategic intimidation is global. But more importantly, it's and significantly felt in Europe right now. And we're responding to that. And we see it manifest in many, many ways in our freedom of our airspace, in our freedom of our seas, and how that has interfered with. And it's the responses around these manipulations. And we see it in electoral basis. I mean, we can identify directly with arson attacks, for instance, in Poland, in Lithuania, in Germany, directly associated with Russia. We can look at Romania in terms of the electoral process and the interference with it. When social media and influencers and paid influencers have been used to manipulate a pro-Russian campaign. During that particular election, there was 85,000 direct interferences in terms of DOS. That's denial of services in terms of against the electoral authority on a pro-Russian backed campaign. So these are the ways in which the strategic interference, intimidation, and it blurs the lines between coercive attack and physical attack, and it blurs the lines between conflict and peace. And I think that's why Mark Rutte would have said, for instance, that Europe is not at war, but neither is it at peace. Okay. And the response from Europe and the member states in particular, my role as the military committee chair is to bring together a cohesion on the 27 EU member states in terms of their activity at a military level, but recognition of the bridging between the civil and military in terms of their collective effort in response to all of these nefarious issues that are arising right across Europe and the globe right now. And we're developing, we're responding to what political at EU have done in terms of reactionary peace around the Preparedness Union strategy and how, as we say, put meat on the bone for this. And therefore, the acceptance of this current environment, as I said, in terms of this multipolar environment, is something we all have to recognize. And I think this is the fundamental piece, and it's a whole of society that it starts with and finishes with.
Thank you, General Clancy. General Clancy, Europe is neither at war nor at peace. You have brought up the issues that are challenging that peace, that are really the domain of what Leslie and Tamara are working on. So I want to pull out that strand on that integration. But first, let me come to Admiral Cavadragone. Much of what General Clancy put on the table were often seen as almost beyond the remit of military planners. And yet the challenges that NATO allies are facing, from drone UAVs and drones to the border incursions to random acts of arson that are not so random, how is this shaping the thinking for you, Admiral, at NATO headquarters, of thinking about the defense of freedom for the allies and doing that in a way that's different now in cooperation with the European Union?
I was wondering that when you speak as a second, 30% of your idea are already blown. So. But of course, I agree on what Sean just said. We have so many points in common with the alliance and the European Union. From our perspective, I mean, face these new events and all the threats that shows up recently demanded that we had to continuously review and adapt our plans, our posture, and what we need to cope with the threat, which has been set back in 2022. But again, even if it is the same threat, which is Russia and the global terrorism, they are changing the way they are approaching us, the way they are posing themselves, for example, in the Ukrainian theater, and we need really to understand, to get any kind of insight to adapt our reaction, our readiness, and on and on. The thing that I can tell you, and this is a process we are really pursuing badly, is, like Sean anticipated, try to transfer our reaction or our way of acting to the whole society, because really it is something now. Security, now democracy, now freedom is not anymore just a matter for military. It's no more. We need to get everybody involved. Sometimes we are not even the principal reactor. Sometimes we are not in charge of it, or we are not able to do something. And now, for this reason, we need to get everybody on board. How can we do this? I mean, involving the civil society from the very beginning of our actions, from planning, exercising, spending, defining what are our needs, and that's something that we probably need to increase, need to foster, because too many times we have been accustomed or spoiled in having the burden or the responsibility of this freedom, security, and democracy on our area, and that's not feasible anymore. So this is something that we really need to improve, and we are on a way on doing that. Just sharing this with of course all the allies and all the like-minded and partnership partners. The big issue, again, just to face this today's situation, is just try to tell our public opinions what we are doing, transparency, with clarity. We don't have anything to hide. Of course, it is something back in the past, probably, even if it was the case at the time. Just consider that we are spending $2.7 trillion in defense, and more than 50% is from the NATO countries. So it is fair that one morning a teacher or a doctor or a nurse wake up and tell us why do we have to buy a new defense system and not a new hospital. And that's fair, but we need to tell them that, defense is not antithetic or is not in contrast with the human welfare. It's just part of it, and sometimes it is the base or the prerequisite of our way of living. And missile child is a school child too, and we can see that from Ukraine. A grid, a resilient grid, is giving light to hospital emergency room, has to the command and control post in our defense system. If we can spread this message, drive this message, and I think that our public opinion can reach and can be part of our future decision, just sharing what we are doing, which is something that is, from the common safety. And if the democracies are really shaping destiny, NATO's job is pretty clear. We have to be sure. If our citizens decide to stay together, we need to be sure that we have the tools, the system, the means, the coherence, and the courage to transfer this choice into real deterrence and strong security.
Thank you, Admiral. So we've just had the Admiral basically say that the work of these two women is as essential to our defense. Talked about the importance of political will, national unity, the civilian aspect of this. So I'm going to start with Tamara first. How do you help sort of connect the dots that our freedom, our defense is secured by our support for freedom? How does that factor into how our nations are actually delivering on that right now? And so pick this up a little bit from your perspective, Tamara. Do we have what it takes to answer the call when our military commanders are saying the civilian fight is just as important?
Damon, thank you. And thanks to Peter and everyone who put together this fantastic series of conversations. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Look, yes, we have what it takes. This is a question of making the decisions to commit. And those decisions, yes, need to come from governments, but not only from governments. The secret sauce of democracy, and we all know this, especially those of us who have experience living in autocratic societies, but the secret sauce of democracy is that it has the capacity to correct its own mistakes, to innovate, to improve itself. And it does that through the daily decisions of citizens and policymakers and business people and civil society. It doesn't happen automatically. And when I think about the assault, Damon, that you mentioned in your opening remarks, the assault on democracy that we are facing globally, it is absolutely, as these two incredible military leaders said, a multidimensional assault. It's on the military front in Ukraine. It is on political and economic and information fronts. Russia is fighting its war through propaganda in Moldova. It is fighting its war through illegal gold mining in Africa. It is fighting its war through mercenaries elsewhere on the African continent. It is fighting its war through sanctions busting and corruption in capital cities and wealthy cities around the world in countries where we and our governments have close military, political, and economic ties. So I think the question we face is, are we prepared to fight this battle on all the fronts where the Russians are fighting it, where the Chinese are fighting it? And they're not doing this, I think, primarily out of ideological reasons, but just out of the quest for power and influence. The more they can undermine democracies, democratic societies, and the concept of democracy, the more room they have for their own influence in countries around the world. That is the fight they're fighting. So is that the fight we're fighting? Now, when it comes to do we have the means, we've heard a lot about F-35s over the last 3 days. I was Director of Foreign Assistance in the Biden administration. My total foreign assistance budget was, I think, less than 3 F-35s. It does not take a lot of government funding to do this work. It takes consistency and commitment. And it takes partners. I think that what I've found most disheartening in our conversation over the last 3 days is the lack of confidence that I'm hearing from so many people when, number one, we have so much going for us, and number two, we can support each other so much better than we're doing. What I found really dismaying this year was not only that my own government chose to cut foreign assistance across the board in ways that were not only short-sighted, but the way they did it very destructive, abandoning partners and friends around the world overnight. But that I saw other governments make the same choice. And I understand budget pressures. I've served in the government. But this stuff is, relatively speaking, cheap. So it's penny wise and pound foolish to cut support for civil society actors, to cut exchange programs, to cut off the number of university visas for students and graduate student researchers in the name of building up your own society. You're actually undermining the strength of your own democratic society and the partnerships that your members of your civil society are building with people around the world.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you. I want to bring this to you, Lesia, because Tamara said we have the confidence, we have the wherewithal to be able to, as democracies, to shape destiny. I think we have all had to watch as Ukrainians took this into their own hands to help shape their destiny by how they have responded to the Russian assault and invasion of your country in a way that has inspired us, has shown that there is capability beyond what many people even imagined in our societies. And yet, today, it still feels very far from how we teed up the conversation on Ukraine. And the conversation that's coming into this weekend was, is there still a pathway to end the war by winning the war? And that doesn't feel like the real conversation we're having about Ukraine outside of these halls right now. So Lesia, can we come to you as probably the most important voice in how to think about whether democracies can decide destiny, knowing that the outcome of Ukraine's struggle is going to be central to that question?
Thank you so much for having me here. There have been a lot of D's in all the titles, but we spent so little time discussing the possible D-Day and planning for that. Because right you are, we are either doomed to a destiny living next to the enemies that improve their technologies as we speak, and we have to spend first 2, then 5, then, as Ukrainians do, 50% of their budget on security needs. But the truth is, democracies fail to meet security needs. If it comes to the war, tyrannies are much better prepared. This is the secret kept silent, but they are much better in allocating human and financial resources. They do not have to go to their voters to ask for support. Because every elections in every country, democratic one, you would have a conversation, as Tamara mentioned, and as Giuseppe mentioned, is it security or social security? Do we invest in jets or we invest in new hospitals? So you have to allocate all this political will to make it happen, while tyrannies do not have this problem at all. Actually, ancient Greeks invented this notion of destiny. They believed that no matter how much human being tries, they're doomed. So the whole tragedy genre was about, people trying, acting, but in the end, they will all die in pain, and in vain. But then another book came. And it's okay on Sunday if I quote Bible, but the idea of a free will and the idea that you, as a person, can do something, and then you would be responsible for your own choices and your own decisions, and you can influence a lot in your life. This is something that each and every Ukrainian felt, not only when the war started. I participated in 2 revolutions, risking my own life and sometimes life of my kids, on my own decision. No one forced me to. Many Ukrainians felt that every man, every woman, and even every child and teenager matters, yeah? We all can do something. We all can participate in our own victory, while, unfortunately, tyrannies can organize much bigger meat waves sending our way. So we are right now, for these 3 days in this forum, discussing the diplomatic options that Russians leaked on our tables. They didn't have even the dignity to put that on our tables, they just leaked it. So what's behind the focus is that Russians do have this nuclear blackmail. They can make this war nuclear even without using nuclear weapons. they keep civilians as hostages, and if they continue targeting our nuclear power plants, as they already done several times, it's just a matter of time when the radiation would be a huge factor of negotiation. So what can be done if you are negotiating with a terror state? You have to make sure you don't have hostages, because right now all Ukrainian civilians are hostages. And if there's a nuclear incident, Eastern European civilians would be hostages. So is there something that could be done better? We, as civilian experts, together with military experts, worked hard to make this strategy, the Sky Shield strategy for Ukraine as the security guarantee. Because if Russians are actually negotiating for real, they would be okay to start with a ceasefire and things like Sky Shield over the sky to make sure that no incident willingly or unwillingly breaks it. There are many things in those items of the peace plan, which is neither about the peace nor looks like a plan, for capping Ukrainian army, which is obviously the only army in Europe which stands between Russian-friendly intentions and European countries. There's also the capping of NATO expansion. And if you would ask why, the most obvious reason is that you wouldn't be able to help Ukrainians. But think deeper. It's because neither Russians nor Chinese want you to have Ukrainians as allies when there will be hostilities on your territory. Because yes, we are weaker as democracies because we have to find a common will to act. But the only thing we have stronger is that free people fight better. We have motivation, we have resourcefulness, and we know why. Thank you.
I think there are a lot of people in this room who would be proud to have Ukraine as an ally. So I'm going to bring in the audience on this issue of democracies deciding destinies. And what we've heard here is that governments have an important role to get things right. They can also get it wrong. A Munich, a Yalta, they can get it right, create a NATO, an EU. But as Leslie has reminded us, that it is governments that are responsive to their peoples. It's the action there, the agency then of our citizens that fundamentally can help reshape those decisions. And so right now, I think the issue as we look to close Halifax, can democracies decide destiny? Do we have the confidence to do it? Where are our people rallying around sort of this pathway? And it's in a moment where this will be decided in Ukraine today, Venezuela, other places around the world. Let's take in a few questions. Please stand up and identify yourself. We'll start with the Ukrainian colleague in the back and then come forward to the front row. Please identify yourself and direct the question, please.
Thank you. I'm Olena Tregub from Ukraine. My question is for the General and the Admiral. You spoke very important words about civilians, about awareness, the whole society defense. And you are the military leaders of Europe. And I'm very curious about what is your current feeling about where the Europeans are in total as population. We know Europe is moving in the right direction about recognizing the threats, about being more aware that society needs to be switched on. But at the same time, you, General, you come from a country, Ireland, where Ireland just elected a president who is worried about, as she says, militarization of Europe. And when it comes to Italy, I was just at a conference in Turin and there were protests saying no NATO in Turin. I don't know why they don't want to have NATO in Turin, but you have groups who don't want NATO in Turin. So are you worried? Are you reassured? What is your sense right now? Because you as a military leaders, obviously you are not fully, your advice and your understanding is a little bit far away from populations of many European countries. So I just wonder how you feel about it.
John Clancy.
Sure. Thank you, Elena, for this question. And I listened to you yesterday as well. And, you know, my job and your points you make, and I don't really want to get into the political debate about Ireland, you know, because there's a lot of curiosity about Ireland, and the conflation between Ireland's stance on neutrality and its position on defence and security are too often conflated, and I don't want to do it in this environment either. But I think if you analyse the presidential election, for instance, our previous president was also very left, and that did not make any difference. So this is not about where Ireland sits. This is about, and I sit on a chair on behalf of the European Union member states. I was elected by my 26 colleagues under secret ballot because they felt and trusted in my ability to bridge the gap between the strategic military intent and the political intent of Europe at this point in time. And therefore, I think, to answer the second part of your question, you know, Europe at the moment, and you're right, the member states are very purposefully catalyzed because of what's happened in Ukraine. And if I can be quite frank, probably, we have seen a decline, a complacency that has happened over 2 to 3 decades through a lack of investment, a lack of awareness, and it has taken this strategic shock that Ukraine has been to the continent of Europe, for Europe in a sense to recognize that violence and violence itself has now become an instrument of politics, not only in Europe, but right across the world. And that is why Europe, through its Preparedness Union strategy, through catalyzing 800 billion of resources between now and 2030 to rearm Europe, that Europe, and through my chair and the consensus of the supports that are being given in military-wise, over 60 billion to date, which is nothing, by the way, but Europe still remains the most strongest supporter of Ukraine and what it has invested in Ukraine, by far, globally. And this is all of these things combined. Are we doing enough? No. And it's a very simple thing from my point of view, and I can be sure for you, I advocate very, very strongly on behalf of Ukraine. I spoke to General Sirski on Thursday. I had him at my EU CHODS meeting by VTC. I have visited him in Ukraine. That doesn't matter whether I'm Irish or German or Belgian. It doesn't influence what I do, because I am a European general. And I meet my destiny in terms of what I do and what my purpose is to do it for. And I can assure you on two simple directions of travel. Weaken Russia through what we can do as member states and what we can do as CHODS to weaken how they get their finances, their economic resources, and so on and so forth, and we can debate all of that. What's most importantly is about their capability and sustaining it right now at the most challenging of times for Ukraine. And that is a significant focus of my work and will continue to do so. And it's about putting the meat on the bone. It's about mobilizing industry to ensure that we can spend, and that, as Lesia has said, the most competent and expertise military we have at this point in time in Europe is the Ukrainian armed forces, without a shadow of a doubt. As an example, in a workshop I had only a month ago, I had all of the Danish service chiefs come in, and we had a very significant workshop to try and influence the roadmap that Europe was putting down. Why did I bring them in? Because they have built the lessons identified from Ukraine at this time. So industry, the military, society, Europe EAS, everybody is engaged not only to invest in Ukraine, but to learn from Ukraine and build coalitions and bilateral coalitions, multilateral coalitions, so that collectively we understand. And we're guided by the principle that the border of Europe is Ukraine. And Ukraine is as important to Europe as Europe is to Ukraine.
True. Thank you, General. Did you want to add anything, Admiral, to Elena's question?
Again, it burned it out. No, I'm just very quickly. First, going to, I was when I was Italian. When I was young, the kind of mantra was Italy out of NATO. So now, no NATO in theory, we are getting better. Having said that, I mean, it's common. I mean, it's a common music we have been listening in all way through. I mean, there are, of course, parties or I mean, communities that are against NATO, against Western world. I mean, it's something that's an heritage from way behind us. But we cope with that. I think that from the Italian point of view, the messages are pretty stronger from our Prime Minister, so there is no doubt. As far as NATO, I mean, a lot of stuff again are said by Sean. But my first trip as the chair of a NATO Military Committee back in February was in Ukraine. And I was I was going over there because I went over there as a job, but I went there as not just by myself, but because 32 allies wanted that the first trip of the chair would be there, and we did it. And we will go again every single year. I will go again just to show that NATO is a side strongly supporting Ukraine. We have been supporting Ukraine, and we will keep on doing that at the best of our capacity. So that's basically the message is really pretty clear. I mean, there is no any kind of flexion, no any change. Of course, as time goes by, you need to keep the fire burning, because I mean that was happened at the very beginning. I mean, front pages, then all of a sudden, of course, that's natural. But it is our commitment as military to signify that the problem is the one that we had at the very beginning on the 24th of February 22. And we need to react, and we need to act, and we need to support the way we have been doing, from the very beginning. And we are doing this. We are doing a lot. I think so.
Terrific. I have seen a lot of hands. We're going to come down to our Taiwanese colleague in the front row, please. Maybe we'll take two on this round, here and here. I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you as well. Okay.
Well, thank you for the panel. My name is Ming Chang from Hello Taiwan. As Tamara has put it nicely, that the bad actors of the world, China and Russia, have been used disinformation, as President Trump will put it, fake news, to create more division in our society and skew the view about the war in Ukraine and about China. And they're very successful, and we have TikTok as a good example. And the United States have passed a law that to transfer TikTok, although we're still waiting for that to happen. And the Senator Keene had mentioned that disinformation starting with education of the youth. And TikTok, and primarily, is talking to the youth. And it is skewing our youth in terms of how they view our global society. And I'm very concerned that this tool, and some of the Americans call it a digital crack, is making our youngsters very addicted to this tool and really skew our mind about democracy and undermine our community. Is there a coordinated effort to help address this type of issue?
All right, we'll come back to digital crack. Let me take the second one here, and tomorrow you'll kick that one off.
Andriy Shevchenko with the Ukrainian World Congress. And by the way, democracy building in Ukraine was an essential part of our resilience. So when we feel disappointed with what's happening around the world, think about that. My question is about this. When you, Damon, mentioned this assault on democracy, we should acknowledge that a big part of that assault is done with democracy tools that we have been cherishing for so long. Our enemies learned how to hijack our free speech concept. They learned how to use bubbles and algorithms of social media to spread the information they need and play with our minds. And they use technologies, innovations to persecute freedom fighters and change builders. So I see this as an intellectual challenge to us, because probably we need to reverse our thinking in a really radical way. And instead of promoting social media, we should probably lead the cause of regulating them. Instead of granting access to information, probably we should think how to limit that access to information. And instead of cognitive defense, we should finally switch to cognitive offense, maybe take off our white gloves and think how we can fight our enemies with cognitive tools better than they do against us. So my question is to you, both on the military side and on the civilian side, do you see signs of this change in thinking Is it necessary? Any thoughts on that?
So related questions on the information challenge and free speech, they get into thorny issues in democracies. Tomorrow, why don't we start with you? Leslie, you can add a bit. And if our military want to be brief on that point, we'll take it before we come to the next round tomorrow.
Yeah, so a couple of points, I think, on digital crack. One is that, as we all know, that's the business model, right? We live in this attention economy. It is integrated into so much of our daily lives. Our politicians in our democracies are also using that attention economy and its platforms to speak to us and us to speak to them. So it's already shaping the way we do democracy, and I would say it is leading us to do democracy in a way that is, yes, much too focused on our differences rather than what we share, but also too fast. Because democracies require people with different views to find a way forward together, and we can only do that through a dialogue and compromise, and that takes time. And digital crack does not create a platform for that, and it also gives us this sense of hurry, 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 and a sense of overwhelm, and that prevents us from having the dialogue and conversation we need to find ways forward together. That's why platforms like this are important. This is a very elite platform, but when you get voters in a room to talk about digital crack and its impact on their kids, you get proposals very quickly. There are localities in European countries that have already agreed to ban cell phones from schools. There are localities in the United States and states that have decided to ban cell phones from schools for precisely this reason. So I think all of us, have to take responsibility for making the space, holding the space, to have those conversations citizen to citizen. That's one. But two, let's not get too down on the young people who are addicted to digital crack. We're all vulnerable to this. And young people in this world have also been empowered by digital tools, whether it was in the Arab Spring or more recently in Bangladesh and Nepal and Tanzania and Madagascar. And these fantastic 15 at 15 visitors who use digital tools to create those tremendous videos. So yes, Andre, we absolutely can go on offense. And maybe we should look to the 5 incredible kids behind you to start building a digital industry that helps us come together, helps us remember what our strengths are, and I think this is very important, helps us learn from each other how each of our societies is pushing back, how each of our societies is repairing what's not working in our democracies so that we can all get better faster.
Leslie, do you want to add a word, free speech fundamental in Ukraine, or are you good to,
Before the collapse of Soviet Union, they would use propaganda to make sure you would believe that the communist way of doing things is a better one. But since we figured out that democracies make better genes in movies, they switched to a concept of not making their way of doing things better, but you starting doubting your own democratic way of doing things. And social media is the best tool to spread this fear and disintegration into the society. Because to make changes, you have to elect not the most clickable and popular politicians, but the wisest people in the room, which is usually not the same. Because when I started my political career and I was first time in Washington, each congressman and woman had 3 staffers. 2 of them were dealing with developing policies, internal and foreign, and 1 of them was dealing with constituency. Guess what? Now, 3 staffers remain, but 1 of them goes to social media. So less brains to actually developing policies, while the world is a much more complicated place than it used to be 2 decades ago. So my point is, Russians have invented, finally they've invented something not stolen, but they've invented the cheapest way to do war. It takes just one drone, $10,000 cost, to put down all Copenhagen airport. And they can do it daily. They've reversed the picture. Because in the Cold War, you were wise enough to drag them into the arm race. Right now, they did the same to you. They're trying to drag you in spending billions on the drone wall, not figuring out actually how to do that. And the only solution is you have to use non-military ways to stop money, which is the blood of their war machine, coming there. Then there's not a single technology or spare part they cannot steal from you or smuggle. But if they run out of money, they would have to stop. And this is something we can focus before big war comes to Europe. Because Ukraine keeps fighting, buying you time to do that. So please stop pretending those sanctions that you've already implied are actually sanctions. Those were the first sanctions to help Ukraine. Right now, you have to start thinking sanctions to help yourself. So to stop financing security to that big extent, and sooner or later putting down Russia where it belongs, to a normal small size, like make Russia small again, in all concepts, and then we can do bright things together. Thank you.
So we're about to hit the witching hour. Let's bring the mic here, and we'll do these two back to back. I'm going to have you be quick, Lobsang, and right here as well. These are final questions. Be to the point, please.
I'll be very quick.
Introduce yourself.
I did Lobsang, Harvard Law School. 2 European officers support Ukraine. Admirable. I also went to Kyiv to show solidarity. 3 Shahid drones hit that night. I ate dinner with Ukrainians, and I slept in my hotel room. I didn't go to the bunker, show solidarity. But Europe is defending Ukraine in the name of democracy. When President of France, Macron, went to China, met with Xi Jinping, and he said, Taiwan is America's problem, not Europe's problem. So Europe is defending Ukraine in the name of democracy, but one of the big leaders, major leaders of Europe is abandoning Taiwanese democracy because it's China. So I would appreciate if 2 of the officers would comment on Taiwan and China.
Can you pass the mic right here, please?
Thank you very much. I'm Senator Rebecca Patterson from Ontario, Canada, and I want to actually talk to our 15 under 15. Tamara, you also talked about community resiliency, and at the heart of democracy are communities. It's the people, because without people there is no democracy. So how do we increase resiliency within our communities so that when we are being hammered by disinformation, maybe even drones, that we have a people who can continue to see optimism and moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to make it easy for our panelists by saying you only have 20 seconds anyways, so you can't be pinned down too badly on Taiwan.
Okay. Thank you very much. Military subordinated to political. Straight. That's a political question, and I think it deserves a political answer, and I can't give you that. The second thing is Taiwan. Transparency on digital information has built trust and confidence, has blunted disinformation, which is an offensive tool that has been used, and it's multifaceted. And answering your question, when you get to that about the youth, the multifaceted approach that comes from this overarching piece is deliberate, and it's what we have learned, that you have to be able to bring whole of society. The Nordics have done it, the Baltics, where the actual soldier is a defender of actually the state, but he's also a symbol of the unity that the state has. The Baltics, everyone in society has a role, and this is how it works. And this is where everyone here in this Youth 15 need to realize that you all have a role. Every single citizen, you all have to play your part in defending democracy and defining it for the future.
Thank you, General Clancy. Admiral, you get the final word.
I buy everything what Sean just said, of course, but I'd like to answer to the ambassador on this defensive-offensive dilemma. I mean, offensive action are an option. I mean, we as military, we need to be able to provide to the political decision maker the options that they will choose. On the other side, let me make you an example that I care a lot, because I mean I'm using it a lot, very much. Speaking about this and thinking about drones, but let's make the example with the arrows. I mean, if they are shooting arrows at you, you have three options. You intercept the arrow, you destroy the arc, or you kill the archer. And NATO has all these three options available from now on. Then it must be decided, I mean, what is the course of action that they want to take. And then I will leave you with a question. Killing the archer is an offensive action or a preemptive defensive action? We are still thinking about this. I mean, we don't have a solution.
All right, we have hit the witching hour, but I want to close on the point that the senator made. We're talking about democracies determining destiny. It is about people. And I think as we sometimes have this sense, as Tamara said, of doubt about whether we can muster the political will and unity for what's required at this moment in Ukraine or for the challenges that we're facing, the power that we have is the power of freedom's advantage, is that people, it burns in their soul and your spirit to have a sense of dignity, protect your community, to worship as you please. And so we don't need to get locked into how many EU member states we have, how many NATO allies we have. If we go back to the fact that we're built on people, we can think about the billions of allies we have in this fight around the world. Billions of allies, many of them that are trapped and buried beneath tyrannies and dictatorships. And this is how we think about democracies determining destiny. We'll take the resolve of political leaders in elected political states, but it's also up to us to do what we can to support those who share our values, and everything is being done to muffle their voices. They are our allies. That is how unleashing the potential of people we will determine, democracies will determine destiny. You hit the nail on the head, Senator. Thank you very much. So thank you to our panelists. Let's invite Peter back up. Thank you.
Thank you, Damon, and thank you to this great panel. Thank you to all our moderators, all our speakers, all of our participants. You traveled a long way to be here. It's not easy, it's a place in the world to get to. So thank you for being here. I want to thank my board, my team, our volunteers, and I want to thank my filmmaker, Steve Markle. Democracies don't despair. Democracies defend differences. Democracies discover dreamers, design doodads, deliver dollars. Democracies defeat dictators. Democracies demand decency. Democracies decide destiny. Have a safe trip home. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Please join us for the midday meal in the Atlantic Ballroom.